Hello everybody, Tommy Ruin here, and whilst leveling up in Season 3 for Project Ascension, you often end up with a lot of clutter abilities that you don't really want. A Conjure Water here and a Farsight there, it all adds up and waters down the great abilities you picked up as you leveled.
This is not okay. This needs to stop now.
Most of the time, those abilities are straight up reroll fodder, and you'll be looking to get rid of them as soon as possible. In this video, I'm going to go over an ability which I really glazed over and often thought about re-rolling but came in clutch when my guild needed it, and give some examples of other abilities that don't get the spotlight but are very useful in certain situations and deserve a spot in your build. So, a few weeks ago now, the guild I am in, Fruit Salad, wanted to try and be the first guild to kill the Nightmare Drakes on a loon, having seen another guild clear them on one of the other seasonal servers. I joined the party late and we went to try and kill Emeris, the dragon in Ashenvale, after they had successfully downed a few of the other dragons before I logged on. Now this dragon does a heavy hitting disease called Volatile Infection, which does heavy nature damage for 2 minutes, hitting for roughly 1000 damage every 5 seconds for that 2 minutes. Now this is obviously a problem that needs to be dealt with because after 2 minutes, most people in your raid will be afflicted with the disease and will be rotting down if it's not cleared. Since forever, it seems that on this toon I have had Cure Disease, a very niche ability which is definitely one of the worst Purify type abilities because diseases are so uncommon. I know I memed a lot about it whilst leveling with my brother because it was always a big moment when either of us were diseased because I was finally able to use it. And I've been thinking about re-rolling it so often with it so close to the chopping block many times. But I haven't because I know that down the line, maybe there will be some disease which needs to be cleared. And I didn't think it would be this quickly. I thought maybe a queue time, but I was right. It turned out that not many people in the guild had a cure disease ability, with only 2 or 3 of us out of nearly 40 players being able to dispel the disease that Emeris puts out. Now there are 2 reasons that this could have happened. Obviously one is people not rolling that ability for those players, so they just never got a cure disease over time when they were leveling up to 60. Or it was an ability that got re-rolled in the hope of getting better DPS. Now as you can see in the footage, we killed the raid boss after a few attempts and I managed to put out a whopping 27 dispels to the raid. Now I'm not saying I was the reason we killed it, as I'm sure others with dispels would have done more if I hadn't sniped them. But if we had all re-rolled our dispel abilities, then that boss definitely would not have been killable. So what I'm trying to say in this video is that just because an ability doesn't increase your DPS, that does not mean that it isn't useful. There are multiple bosses that are unkillable without the right decurse or purify type spell. Hell, I was in Molten Core just the other day with a pug and it just wasn't possible because nobody had remove curse. Abilities that aren't DPS boosters for you are just as important as those that boost your DPS in some situations, as they can make mechanics doable, boost other raiders' damage, and even trivialize some mechanics in some cases. Now I have already mentioned cleanse and dispel type abilities, but there are other things that you should seriously consider not re-rolling because they will be needed down the line in a raid. Now I'll go over a few examples for each class quickly and give a reason as to why you may want to think twice about rolling it away. Now obviously I'm not going to go over everything, there are loads of these types of abilities that you may think about re-rolling that might be useful at some point. And I'm sure I'll miss some big ones, so make sure you point them out down in the comments section if you think of something that I haven't. So I'm going to go over an example for each class, one ability that I think deserves a spot in your build that you might just shrug and look over. So first of all we have Druids, and in the Druid tree we have Fairy Fire. Now this ability is nice because when talented to improved Fairy Fire, it gives your raid an increased 3% hit chance on the target that you mark, and this means that your raid can drop hit gear or talents and focus on doing more damage rather than worrying about hit rating. Now this leads to a DPS increase for your group. Secondly, for hunters, we have Tranquilizing Shot, and this is a very important ability as it allows you to dispel enrage mechanics on bosses that have them, such as Magmadar in Molten Core. Now this reduces the damage output of the bosses and gives your group a better chance of survival. It makes it easier for your tanks and your healers. In Mage, we have Scorch. Bit of a weird one, but bear with me. With improved Scorch, you give your raid a 5% increased crit chance. So while you're healing or DPSing, throw out a Scorch every 30 seconds and boost your raid's crit chance. In Paladin, we have Hand of Salvation. Now this ability is great, as it reduces the threat of whoever you toss the buff on. If there's one thing I've seen wiping raid groups on Seasonal, it's DPS over-threating the tanks. So if you have Hand of Salvation, throw it on the DPS with the most threat and watch them drop down the threat meter. In Priest, we have Mana Burn. This ability is nice on bosses like Shazra and Moam in the Ruins of AQ, where you want to drain their mana to stop them doing some abilities that they do. This can circumvent mechanics and makes the bosses considerably easier. Now, for Rogue, one of the top abilities if you ever want to clear Blackwing Lair is Disarm Trap. This ability is a must-have because if you want to clear the suppression room, you will need someone to disarm traps. Don't re-roll this, or the suppression room will become a depression room. For Shamans, we have Tremor Totem. This ability is amazing and needed on multiple bosses, for example Onyxia and again Magmadar, where the boss fears you. If you have a Tremor Totem, then you'll be so useful for your group and prevent a lot of deaths. Now there are lots of abilities for Warlock that will be useful, but one that is very good is Curse of Elements, as it gives a resistance reduction to the target. And I saw recently a melee ask if they should re-roll it, and it blew my mind really, because regardless of if you're a caster or a melee, the bonus it offers to your group is insane and is a must-have for raiding. Now for warriors, something like Demoralizing Shout will help keep your group alive from large packs of melee mobs, such as the Onyxia whelps in Onyxia's lair. So hopefully this video has got you lot thinking about some of the abilities that you might have thought are worthless and that aren't just a DPS boost. Sometimes you have to think of the bigger picture and think of what your raid group might benefit from rather than what you will benefit from, because at the end of the day, if you're doing any type of PvE content, and even in PvP in some circumstances, you will need to kind of all pull your abilities together, and it's not just a DPS race or a heals race. You need to get around mechanics in some cases, and those require very niche abilities, especially in the earlier expansions. Remember, you can't do DPS if you are dead. So thanks for watching guys. Let me know if you have learned anything down in the comments section, and let me know some other abilities that are useful that don't do DPS. If you are new to Ascension, make sure you use the referral link in the video description. Thanks again, and I will see you all very soon. Is it you?